We are in Chicago, and I cannot think of a more customer-centric company based in Chicago than Hyatt. So please welcome Ray Boyle, Vice President of Data and Analytics. So Ray, let's just jump in. 1,250 properties around the world, so we have the global challenges. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of customers. What are you personally managing on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you for having me, by the way. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I've got the data analytics and strategic intelligence aspects of what we do at Hyatt. So the work that we're doing really focuses on Hyatt's purpose. So Hyatt has this amazing purpose of caring for people so that they can really excel, and the data world is just a mirror and reflection of that purpose. So our purpose within data is advancing care through data-driven decisions and automation. We really focus on those aspects of automation, and that takes the form of developing the organization's culture and making sure that the whole company is sort of locked onto the data strategy, that we're building an operating model and a talent architecture to really accelerate our ability to plan and grow the organization, that our leaders are becoming fluent and think and deal with business challenges with a data and an automation mentality as they work to grow and develop the business. We also focus on, sort of a series of pillars. One is this idea of personalization and trust. So making sure that our systems are responsive to the guest and growing with the journey and really caring for them throughout that journey. But we're doing it in a way that's high security and high trust, and developing sort of the capabilities of the company. Operations are a really big deal. So operationally, we want to make sure that the entire system is sensing and receiving information on our guests. And then we're really making a long-term drive to make the company simpler and more efficient, and then support the growth of the organization as well, Janet. So,
yeah, because there are more and more properties all the time. Let's dig into the experience of the customer, because we have a great diversity of companies in this room as well as joining us virtually. But Hyatt is a company that sees its customers in person.
Yep.
They actually come to you or wherever Hyatt is where they need to be. Can you give us some examples of how Hyatt is using automation to actually improve the customer experience?
Yeah, first off, everything in our world begins with our guest and our customers. So, we're sort of designed to care for folks. So when we think about automation, there's a couple things that I really think about. Number one is we've got systems that really sense and provide feedback into the business every day, all the time, from our guests. They're giving us information from surveys perspective, and we're really understanding behaviorally where they're at. And that's huge because we've over 160,000 employees, and people are sensing and responding to that feedback all the time. And then we want that data and that information to flow into the way that we build strategies and plan, and make sure that from a technology perspective, we're accelerating the flow of data, we're reducing the latency of data, we're tying that into systems that are designed to be extremely smart, right? To make sure that they can consume algorithms and sort of drive into sensitivity around the guest. So that takes the form of personalization systems that are making sure that the content that a guest sees is right, depending on kind of where they're at in their journey, what's happening within the context of their travel. It gets into things like search. How do the systems respond when someone's looking to book a property, and sort of helping to execute those capabilities. Other examples would be just simplifying the journey, so making sure that we make check-in more seamless and smooth, and getting into a room more automated over time, and just sort of reducing the stress and helping guests flow through that process. So lots and lots of work that's going on to sort of really take care of our guests.
This afternoon, we've been talking about some of the challenges of getting a workforce to adopt technology and automation and new solutions. You are thinking about how customers are going to adopt, and there's always a fear that automation is going to make things more impersonal. Are there any surprises that you've seen with how your guests, your customers, have been interacting with automation? Are there surprises in how they are using what you're automating?
Yeah, when you're automating processes and making, because we're a big company, right? We've got lots of properties, lots of journeys, lots of content, lots of things that guests are doing within our system and our loyalty programs and so on and so forth. So when we have an opportunity to personalize the experience and really perfect what we're talking about with guests at what time, it really accelerates the learning process within the business. You could see, it from a marketing perspective as one example. You've got many, many options of content that will go to a guest, so that guest can select what they care most about. And the marketing process learns faster. We're able to get a sense for what content, what types of topics people want to talk about. They want to talk about properties. Do they want to talk about the amenities in the properties, the loyalty program, the credit program, different things we're doing from a pricing perspective. And that feedback comes in much faster. The learning systems are cleaner, and then you can measure and really understand incrementality around some of those feedback loops. So.
We are talking a lot about using automation for bigger, better outcomes and with cost savings. That's a big theme of today because everyone is feeling the economic uncertainty. That's the title of this event. Have automation solutions at Hyatt, have they led to significant cost savings or better productivity? What are you seeing?
How do I think about that? Yeah, I mean, I think when you get automation right, it clearly can strip cost out, simplify the business, and add speed. The work that we take on within the world at Hyatt and the data world is really a mirror of Hyatt's corporate strategy and then the investment and outcomes that we want to see for the business. So we really sort of lock onto those. And a lot of those are designed around simplifying the business and reducing cost. A lot of them are about taking care of our guests or growth objectives and things along those lines. So yeah, but when automation is applied in the right way, it helps with the journey. It helps our colleagues in terms of their work and the things that they do to care for our guests and work together. And you can certainly simplify the business and get some of those outcomes as well.
I want to bring up the stress of the pandemic because so many companies remain impacted by what we all went through in the last 3 years. Being a hospitality company, you basically had to shut down and then scale back up. And how did technology help with that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I joined Hyatt probably about 3 or 4 months before the pandemic hit. So when I came into the business.
Great timing.
Great timing, yeah. It was clearly, an ultra shock in our industry. So appreciate that commentary. 2 things that I would say about COVID that I think were really interesting. One is the systems that we use to plan the business and manage the business and drive the business and understand, seasonality and what demand's going to look like and who's going to show up typically in the property and all of that. How many plates to serve in a restaurant. The systems and the data that informed all of that stopped working immediately. So the first thing I would note is the signals that we use to understand what's happening in the world changed. And the company had to be extremely agile in thinking through how do we understand the disease? How do we understand COVID? How do we understand the policy framework in different regions and countries around the world? Who's open, who's shut down, how are travel restrictions sort of playing out? We had to get information on who's moving in different areas. Because the recovery and the way the industry responded was really distributed around the world and in different regions and different locations. So a lot of detailed information on what we're seeing in terms of movement, travel, staycations. There was a lot of different travel patterns that emerged. So just getting the data right to make the company agile and move and sort of flex with demand was really, really important. The other thing that I found, or we found as we went through COVID, was you had to think differently. So the speed of innovation, the way that silos broke down, the way that people worked together to solve problems really transformed, and the company kind of had to come together and work together. And Hyatt's got this beautiful culture, so when people were working through that, it was pretty powerful. And I think a lot of the agility and the speed that the company received through the COVID experience is really sort of helping and a big part of what we're doing today.
Yeah. And I want to bring up, you have a presence around the world. So you had to do totally different things, say, in parts of Asia, where their COVID protocols are much different. Like, you are not allowed to go to work.
Yeah.
You have to stay inside your house at all times, versus maybe other places in Europe, and then scaling up so differently. That was a lot that had to be managed.
Regional issues and differences, compliance and government-related issues, business travel versus group travel versus transient travel versus people that want to go to the beach. I mean, just the way that the whole urban versus, sort of rural or suburban travel, just all the dynamics of the industry have been, just interesting to watch. And the companies really had to be flexible and agile as we work to sort of take full advantage of the opportunity and then recover when the guest is ready to move and we can meet them where they are.
So to share with the people in this room and joining us virtually who represent so many different kinds of companies, how does Hyatt evaluate new proposed projects? How do you know when to invest and when to say, okay, let's try this?
The work that we do in the data and the machine learning space is designed to be a mirror of the company, right? So we've got a corporate strategy, and then we've got a process that we go through to determine which initiatives are most important for the company, what the outcomes of those initiatives are designed to be. And so the work that we take on is really driven by those outcomes. So we sort of get in and support the way that evolves. From a data perspective and a technology perspective, we think of what we do as a product. Like, data is a product, the data itself, the enablement of that data, the way that we build capabilities for the business, the way that we develop algorithms and things that are going to support the application system. So for those, the way that we evaluate performance is often specific to the capability of the product. So it might be about adoption, it might be about incremental revenue, it could be about bookings, it could be about the SLAs and the performance of the technology and the quality of the deliverable itself. So it takes a couple different flavors. Yeah, but we invest, sort of to support the things that are most important to Hyatt.
So I don't want to put you on the spot with specific numbers, but you have 1,250 properties.
Yeah.
You are, of course, very customer-centric, which means that you're labor-intensive. What's the rough number of the workforce? It's tens of thousands of people.
About 160,000.
160,000 people. So how do you create a company culture that not only makes that many people feel cohesive, but creates a culture that so many different people working in so many different roles will embrace new technology solutions?
Interesting question. So first off, I think about data a lot. So data is everywhere. Data is everyone. It's sort of everyone in the business consumes it. The technology teams are all publishers and producers of data, and so on and so forth. So we think about two things. One is leadership, right? I mean, it's in a lot of research that we see within our company, but generally, great leaders are data-driven. Great leaders are thinking about the application of automation and technology in the way that they care for their customers, in the way that they develop the function. And they're fluent, like making sure the company understands how we want to measure the business and understands those metrics, understands the linkage between a clean room and the profit of a property, things along those lines is really, really important. So from a cultural perspective, just understanding the relationship between good data practices and leadership is really important. The other thing that we pay attention to culturally is the operating model, right? Because the business has a really important role to play, and business people have a really important role to play in, understanding how they want to transform their function, in the stewardship of the data that they use to manage the business, in the quality of the data that as they see it in the change programs within the business. So super important. The technology world owns the applications. They really know the data, and they have a huge accountability to get that data flowing, to make it lower, faster, rip out the latency of the business and serve the needs for data and information across the organization. And then the data organization and the data teams They have to make sure that we've got standards and core platforms and governance and security, and we're engineering the data so that it can be consumable, build once, consumed many times, and horizontally available for the decisions and the automation that really power the company. So culture is about getting that whole organization to play. Everyone knows the roles that other people play. They know how to pop and roll and really help to drive the business forward. So you got to pay attention to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and these are customers that are paying attention because there's something about personal. There's something so personal about where you stay. Like under no circumstances for a frequent guest, can you say, I don't have your reservation, or I don't see that you've stayed 100 nights with us last year, whatever. So a lot goes into the security and the management of that data.
Yeah.
Is this a division that you are in that is growing massively within Hyatt?
Is this a division that, I think the needs for what we do from an investment, like the company wants to do stuff, right? And they're trying to figure out how to get really important and strategic things done as a business. And I think what I'm seeing is the role of data, the role of machine learning, the role of automation within the different things the company's doing is advancing and growing sort of in a natural way, but it's really at pace with what the business is trying to achieve. So yeah, we're feeling some growth, but it's just a natural function of things that the company's trying to do.
I suppose a better way of saying is that you have no choice but to grow automation because the data grows so much every year. The customer base, the properties, everything, that you need more resources to manage all of that. It seems quite daunting for someone who's outside of that.
Yeah. Data. Yeah, for the growth of data, a couple things that we pay attention to, and I don't know if it's about people, but I think automation is a part of that, right? So a number of things. One is trust, right? We really do want to make sure that the first thing we're thinking about is the security and the care of someone's sensitive data that they entrust us with. So that's one. Two is we think of data as a product. So when we think about scale, quality, smooth delivery, the sort of the agile development of capability for the business, we think of it as a product. So we hopefully don't have to have as many people, right, to do it. But that takes some work to build. We think about, as you grow the data asset, good data stewardship practices. So the business really owning the data, helping to define what it looks like and what it needs to be and do, and getting clarity on those accountabilities and make sure that's in place. And then the last thing, when we think about scaling data, is being modern, right? I mean, getting to cloud, getting into an environment where all of the new capabilities, because this industry is moving really, really fast, and it's just fascinating to see the development of it. But making sure that we're in a modern posture and we're in a good position to take advantage of emerging capabilities and everything that's happening in the industry is important as well.
In the last minute, can you talk about any trends you see in the hospitality sector on the horizon?
Any trend? Yeah, there's so many. I'll talk about something in this space, right? I mean, I do think that the AI conversation that we had a chance to listen to earlier is fascinating, and we'll pay attention to that and develop it and design it. But I just get excited about thinking about things like, right now people come and they say, I want to go to Chicago, and that's how they search for a property. But you can see a day where they say, you know what, I want to go to the beach. I want to take my family. I want to be somewhere where it's between X and Y degrees, and I'd like to stay at a boutique hotel. And I'd like to know about the city. I'd like to understand if there's some things that we can do that would be fun while we're there. And just that interaction between how people dream and search and the experience that they can have within the travel industry, I think is just an area that I'm going to be watching and excited about. So
I want to see where the next property opens.
Yeah.
Ray Boyle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.